Hey, good morning, everyone, and welcome from the Guilford Nonprofit Consortium on this beautiful Friday morning. We are excited today to learn more about leveraging generational differences as a superpower in our organizations. And I am excited to have Leslie Spees with us. She is a seasoned human resource executive with over 30 years of experience in HR and organizational development. She serves, oh, if we could mute our phones for right now, or the line for right now, great, thank you. Um, she serves as founder and president of InfluenceHR Consulting, a firm dedicated to helping leaders and HR teams attract, retain, and develop talented employees. So we're going to go ahead and turn it over to Leslie. You can put your questions in the chat and we can ask questions. Is that okay, Leslie, throughout as well?
Of course, yes. And
Okay.
I'm going to be asking you guys to interact throughout as well. So,
Thank
welcome to Leveraging Generational Differences as a Superpower. Let me see if I can advance. There we go. So, for the first time in history, we have up to 5 generations working alongside one another. These generational differences can result in cracks in engagement, productivity, and even turnover if not addressed and we don't figure out a way to best leverage them. So the gap seems to be widening lately as evidenced by these hashtags. I wasn't familiar with all of these, but hashtag OKBoomer, that's millennials making fun of boomers. Whoops. Sorry about that, y'all. We were just talking about the pleasures of Zoom earlier. All right. Okay, we're back. Hashtag OK Nancy, and that's Gen Z making fun of Gen X. Hashtag Doggo, Gen Z making fun of millennials. Hashtag How to Confuse a Millennial, and that's boomers and Gen X's making fun of millennials. So why do you guys think that the generation gap is widening more and faster than ever before? Anybody have thoughts? You can either speak up or type in the chat.
I'll jump in. Technology is moving so fast.
Absolutely.
That seems to be where my growing edge is all the time.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have thoughts?
I think people are living longer and hanging in the workplace longer.
Absolutely. Agree.
And there's another comment about we're living in a very fast-paced world that seems to be impacting our ability to communicate honestly.
Agree 100%. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. So what if your organization had all of the generations contributing from their strengths? And what if each generation actually listened to the others? I think our workplaces would be much more collaborative, productive, and successful, and there'd be a lot less conflict and drama. See, somebody said that would be wonderful in the comments. So let's learn how to get there. I'm going to solve all your problems today. Here's what we'll cover. So we're going to talk about what a generation is and what defines it, the 4 most prevalent generations in the workplace. We'll talk about their defining events and experiences, pop culture, values, etc., and ways that we can bridge the gap and leverage the strengths of each generation. Let's start by talking about what a generation is. It is a group of people who share birth years and similar experience of major external events during their adolescence and early adult years, or otherwise known as their formative years, and it's about age 12 to 25. What shapes a generation? So one of the things is the time in history where they spend their formative years, the economy. So for those generations whose formative years are during the time when the economy is good, generally tend to be a little more optimistic in approach than those who have not. Technology certainly shapes a generation, and it's moving faster than ever before. I remember the days, as maybe some of you guys do, before cell phones and before even computers and internet. No, it's hard to believe. And think about what we have now and AI and how it's moving so fast and how it's going to probably impact us on a day-to-day basis differently. Entertainment shapes a generation, tragedies, heroes, and villains, and family environments. So during formative years, is it more of a traditional family environment, or are there more single parent homes, different type family environments? So all of those things shape a generation. So I want to give you a disclaimer before we dive into the generations. So this presentation includes generalizations that reflects research into attitudes and behaviors of age groups in the workplace. It's not recommended that you interact with people strictly based on these generalizations. You need to take individuality into account. But it does provide, I think, some useful information about patterns which can help guide you in working with team members from different generations. And I see Mary remembers getting her first email account at the university and thinking people will abandon this pretty quickly. Yep. Okay, so these are the generations at work. We have Generation Z, and I will say that the years vary a little bit depending on the source, but generally 1995 to 2015 in terms of birth years. Millennials, 1981 to 1996. Gen X, 1965 to 1980. Baby Boomers, 1946 to 1964, and Traditionalists, 1922 to 1945. And I will say that you may relate to more than one generation depending on when you're born. I, for example, am a very old Gen Xer. So some of the boomer traits I relate to as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. As of this year, half of the US workforce is made up of millennials and Gen Z. So let's let that sink in for a minute. For those of us in the more senior generations, it's a little bit frightening because we're not always sure how to best deal with the younger generations in the workplace. All right, so I want to have a little discussion, and I'm going to try to send you guys to breakout groups. We'll make it pretty fast, but trying to see, Mary, I'm not sure it's going to let me do that. Texters. Defining events and experiences for Gen Z. Got Obama, the financial crisis of 2008, terrorism, YouTube, cyberbullying, reality TV, technology, and COVID. Pop culture and memories of. So we'll talk about this for each generation. So what do you think in terms of music for Gen Z? What's some of the music during their formative years? And Megan, you might be the best judge of this since you mentioned you are a Gen Z.
Of my music taste will span across the generation.
Okay, yeah. All right, well, let's look at some. We got the is it Swifties or Swifters? Y'all see how hip I am.
Yeah.
Beyonce, Miley Cyrus, Lady Gaga, Justin Bieber, Drake, Billie Eilish. I had to ask my daughter how to pronounce that. As far as TV and movies, Breaking Bad, Hunger Games, Walking Dead, The Office, High School Musical, and not much traditional TV. So Netflix, Hulu, all the streaming platforms are what they use more frequently. All right, so this last one is memorabilia, I can't talk today, and heroes, heroines. So Steve Jobs, the Kardashians, which is rather scary, YouTubers, Obama, and superheroes. Key influences for Gen Z. Popularity of gaming, technology, and social media, obviously. They came of age during the recession, terror threats, school shootings, pandemic, and political polarization. So you can see why they're the most stressed out generation, the most racially diverse generation. Many did not have jobs growing up, and that really impacts, I think, how they are showing up in the workplace. Values and traits, very tolerant of others, fluid in identities, gender preferences, etc. Wrestle with mental health issues, cautious and hardened by economic and social turbulence, reinvention, so different is the new normal. And my daughter is very indicative of that. She is a pastor, but she really likes Halloween, so and has tattoos and all the piercings. So I call her Pastor Wednesday Adams. Independent, used to being alone on a device, connected 24/7. And I have a meme for each generation. So in 2060, here's a picture of Grandpa. Generation Z at work. So what are your thoughts on how all this impacts how they show up at work? What are their characteristics in the workplace? And I'll just give you guys a minute to type in the chat, and then I'll show you what I came up with. So maybe nobody knows, or you came here to learn. So they welcome diversity, shorter attention spans, limited interpersonal skills because they have spent so much time with technology and on a device, creative, especially with technology. They like frequent feedback and rewards, development focused. They prefer flexible lifestyle over money, very focused on social responsibility, motivated by purpose. They won't trust someone just because of title or position, and they don't want bosses, they want coaches. So the more autocratic style of leadership does not work with Gen Z or millennials for that matter. And communicate through social media, Snapchat, and text. I'll talk about the superpowers for each generation. So the superpowers for Gen Z are hacker mindset. So they can figure out a lot of things through YouTube on their device. They don't necessarily need somebody to teach them how to do something. Entrepreneurial, cause-oriented, really good social media skills, and do-it-yourself disposition. And finally, fresh perspective. All right, questions, comments on Gen Z before we move along? Yeah, and I see Mary says, love the hacker mindset. Okay, very good. We'll move along to millennials. Millennials are also known as Gen Y, as we talked about. They grew up in the new millennium, raised by parents preoccupied with their safety, self-esteem, and status. Defining events and experiences for millennials. The new millennium, healthy economy during their formative years, Oklahoma City, school shootings, technology, Clinton Lewinsky, protective parents, and 9/11. All right, music for millennials. Anybody have thoughts? All right, well, I'll keep us moving along. Goo Goo Dolls, Spice Girls, Eminem, NSYNC, boy bands, right? Rap music, Britney Spears, Blink 182, Destiny's Child. TV and movies, Dawson's Creek, the WB, Malcolm in the Middle, That 70s Show, Family Matters, ER. And for memorabilia and heroes, NYPD, NYFD, parents, Princess Diana, Bill Gates, Mia Hamm. Key influences for millennials. They grew up with technology, so not quite as immersed as Gen Z, but pretty much always had, internet, some form of cell phones, etc. Busiest generation of children ever. So as a parent of a millennial, I know we had to have them in all of the things. Grew up seeing the world as global and connected. Parents put children first, acted as their advocates. So you've probably heard the term helicopter parents, soccer moms, etc. That's where that comes from. Lots of exposure to multiculturalism. Constantly coached, praised, and encouraged for participation rather than accomplishments. Millennial values and traits. They tend to be confident, have a respect for diversity, pretty good with change, goal and achievement oriented, high levels of social concern, as with Gen Z, need to have a purpose, and very technical. Here's our millennial meme. Millennials at work. Share with me in the chat your thoughts. How do they show up at work?
I remember I worked for a really big company and it was like throwing confetti all the time. We literally did that with the newer folks coming on board.
Mm-hmm.
Literal and virtual confetti
Okay.
for everything, for everything.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I see Megan says non-hierarchical. You're really testing me, Megan. Hierarchical. Anybody else have thoughts? All right. Great multitaskers and team players. Hard workers. They appreciate flexibility, freedom, and career growth. Like lots of feedback, mostly positive. Strong commitment to social responsibility. Want immediate gratification. So that definitely is a bit of a stereotype about millennials that, as in the meme, they come into the workplace and immediately want to be promoted. Change jobs more easily than previous generations. Welcome diversity. Want a purpose, meaningful work, as I think really we all do. And they don't want bosses, they want coaches. So you'll see that as a theme with the younger generations in the workplace. And their communication preference is by text and virtual chat. Superpowers, confidence, tech sense, tend to be pretty social because we kept them in all of the activities. Optimistic, well-rounded. Questions, comments about millennials before we move on to Gen X. All right, this is an actual picture of my hair in the 80s. I'm joking. So you'll see the dawn of the cell phone was the giant bag phone that you'll see a picture of. So Gen X began with the birth control pill, and that is why they are also known as baby busters. So this is the smallest generation in terms of numbers of people. Defining events and experiences. The fall of the Berlin Wall, women's liberation, Watergate, AIDS, the divorce rate doubled, Persian Gulf War, energy crisis, massive layoffs, invention of the PC, and MTV. Right, music for Gen X. I know we got some Gen X's in here, so type in the chat what music resonates with you that you grew up with. There's a bit of a delay in the chat. So, okay, Motown, grunge to an extent, early hip hop. Yeah, early hip hop was the bomb, the Sugar Hill Gang. Culture Club, Boy George, Whitney Houston. Yeah, good ones. All right, so I'll show you what I came up with. Madonna, hair bands, Prince, Nirvana, Boy George, and grunge. TV and movies. Friends, 90210, Cosby Show, Family Ties, Breakfast Club, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, MTV. Boy, I saw some of those old MTV videos recently, and they were so bad. But back in the day, I thought they were really cool. Heroes and memorabilia. Tanya Harding, not sure that's a hero, but most of Gen Xers definitely remember that whole issue. Beavis and Butthead, Bill Clinton, Muhammad Ali. Key influences. The economy was uncertain. They grew up guarded, lobbying for and against societal issues. The role of women began to change, and many mothers started working outside the home. Many were affected by divorce and latchkey kids. So, what that means is oftentimes would come home after school, unlock the door, get their own snack, start doing their homework. So, it made them more independent. And here are our Gen X memes. Gen X values and traits, value diversity, adaptable, want balance. So Gen X actually started the discussion about work-life balance. Techno literacy, so didn't necessarily grow up with technology, but have figured it out and evolved. Guarded in relationships. And part of that is the divorce rate. Another part of it is that, they saw, and not necessarily relationships, but in the workplace, they saw their parents dedicated to an organization and in many cases get laid off. Independent, cynical, jaded for all the reasons that I talked about. And they felt that education was the key to success. Generation X at work. Early work experience was shaped by boomer norms and expectations. Independent approach to work. Don't like to be micromanaged, which I don't think anybody does. Do not offer blind loyalty to a company. So actually, Gen X was viewed as being job hoppers early on. They would make a move rather than, blindly be loyal if they felt like that was needed, or they didn't feel like the organization was investing in them. Want work-life balance. Enjoy achieving measurable results and streamlining systems and processes, and like email communication, and okay with face-to-face and phone as well. Superpowers of Gen X: realism, authenticity, balance, resourcefulness, and pragmatic wisdom. And what I mean by that is, they'll ask some questions and be a little cynical on the front end, but then, once they get their questions answered, will share their wisdom. All right, questions, comments on Gen X?
Just a comment, and I don't know if this is an experience that can be broadly characterized by Gen X, but we were really poured into in the workplace. I went through more training and more professional development and had mentors all the way along, because maybe because the expectation that you're going to stay somewhere for a really
Mhm.
long time by the generation above us. And so
Yeah.
that's something that I see really different now.
Mhm.
That the younger generations aren't getting the kind of professional development that we had.
Yeah. That's a
Things
good
move so
point.
much faster now that, and that might be, people don't
Mhm.
pause to do that kind of mentoring that we had as our generation.
Yeah, that's a great
I don't know if
insight.
my fellow Gen X would feel the same way.
I definitely see some of that. And I'm kind of surprised because, I mean, I think we know how important it is to the younger generations, the career development piece, but I don't see a ton of organizations investing heavily in that. All right. Well, moving along to baby boomers, there was a boom of babies after World War II. There's over 70 million baby boomers in the US. By 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be over age 65. Defining events and experiences, civil rights movement, space travel, Cold War, Vietnam War, sexual revolution, assassinations, TV, and rock and roll. Music, Beatles, Rolling Stones, Led Zeppelin, The Doors, Elvis. TV and movies, Laugh-In, Westerns, Carson, Gilligan's Island, MASH, Sunday Night Disney, and Hee Haw. And heroes and memorabilia, JFK and Jackie, Martin Luther King, John Lennon, John Glenn. Key influences. Post-World War II era had kind of a hopeful mood. They were raised under Dr. Spock's views to let children express ideas, where previously, really, I remember my grandmother saying children should be seen and not heard. So things started to shift with the boomer generation. Information became more accessible. Grew up with television. First generation to be graded on their report card by works well with others. Values and traits, optimism, personal gratification, so they're dubbed the me generation. Expectations climbed with TV advertising that said you deserve this and that. Competitive, so they were a large generation and they were really battling for a place in the world. Questioned authority, independent, social consciousness. Baby boomers at work, competitive and hardworking, team players, they love to have meetings, focused on money, title, recognition, have a get it done at all cost attitude that's made them very successful, strong work ethic, pretty loyal to organization, like to communicate face to face and by phone. Superpowers, stories from their journey, experience on the job, awareness of pitfalls to avoid, mentoring and coaching. All right, so I'm going to send you guys this presentation, but this is just a cheat sheet for each of the generations. Just due to time, I'm not going to talk about the traditionalists because they're less than 2% of the workplace. However, I know that in nonprofits, you have volunteers that are traditionalists. So as a follow-up, I will send you some information on traditionalists similar to what I've covered with the other generations. Every generation wants. So what do you think? What are some things that every generation you think wants in the workplace? To be heard and respected. Okay. Meaning and purpose in their work. To feel appreciated. Professional growth opportunities. And supportive leadership. How can we bridge the gap? What ideas do you guys have? What are some things that we could do to bridge the gap that results from generational differences? You guys can speak up or type in the chat if you have ideas. And if not, that may be what you came here for. Start at a point where there are commonalities. Love it. Team building. Yes. Love that too, Nedra. Training. Yes. Focus on strengths across generations. Yes. Okay, so I'm going to start with 3 things that you can do as an individual to bridge the gap. And the first is to be humble. So be open to input, recognize that we are all human and flawed, listen to others regardless of their generation. Show respect. So offer respect to others, show that you esteem them. And be curious, enter conversations, curious to learn and see new perspectives. 5 things your organizations can do to bridge the gap. Number 1, develop your bosses to be more coach-like. You will see that the younger generations in the workplace, as I went through what they, how they prefer to be treated, they want their bosses to be more coach-like. And I think it's a good thing for all of us because when we're coached as opposed to being managed or told what we need to do, we learn and grow and are more effective. Help younger generations develop soft skills. So there is a bit of a gap there that we can help plug. Have education and conversation around generational differences. So consider sharing information like this with your team or in your organizations. Develop mentoring and reverse mentoring programs. So I really like the idea of reverse mentoring because some of us older folks in the workplace definitely have some things that we can learn from the younger generations, having been more recently probably educated on some things, maybe college, tech school, whatever. And they certainly probably have better technical skills because they've grown up with technology. Number 5, and most important, see people as individuals and don't categorize them by stereotypes. Leverage the strengths of each person. And one of the ways that you can do that, somebody mentioned team building. So I love that idea, just to share differences in general and how you can leverage those differences to be most effective as a team. Because if we were all the same, we would be much less effective because we wouldn't be able to leverage the strengths of the team, if that makes sense. All right, so I'm going to share some of the sources here. And I do have a toolkit that you can download by going to the QR code here. I also will send you the presentation, which pretty much has the same information. So I'd like to just ask, what questions or comments do you guys have?